This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That is the famous final line of Albert Camus' essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was the king of Ephyra and the most cunning mortal in all of Greek mythology, who, in the most renowned version of the myth, cheated death and as punishment was sentenced by the gods to push a huge boulder up a hill for all eternity. The punishment is not just the brutal physical labour, but the dissatisfaction of never being able to achieve the task, for the boulder would always, forever, roll back onto the foot of the hill before ever reaching the top. Over the past year, I have been wrangling with this painful realisation that I too may be engaging in a Sisyphean task of my own, one which very well may be entirely futile. Now, its overt futility has made me feel rather ashamed and embarrassed of my pursuit of it, and has led to many people in my life asking why I do something like this, because by all accounts, it's going to be impossible. And in one of my late-night battles with my brain lying in bed, the figure of Sisyphus emerged before me, as did Camus' interpretation of him as the absurd hero. Camus' philosophy of the absurd is that which relates to two other branches of philosophy, nihilism and existentialism. Where existentialists fought against nihilism, attempting to find meaning in the abyss of it all, Camus claimed there is no meaning in life, and that doesn't matter in the slightest. The absurd for Camus was humanity's desperate drive to keep seeking and find meaning in a life where in reality there is none. And even then, we wouldn't know what we're looking for. So how would someone know if they found meaning if they did? No one has ever found a universal meaning by any means. And theologians and philosophers who keep attempting to answer the question, what is the meaning of life, are running a fool's errand. Now, I should clarify that the universe and the world are not absurd, but our relationship with them is. Thus, what is absurd is how we exist simultaneously. But before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place and all on your terms. I've gone through so many iterations online, from blogging to running a business, and Squarespace has seen all the sides of my online evolution. Were I to launch a writing workshop or workshop of any kind, I can host it all on my Squarespace website, where I can sell anything from memberships to blogs to videos and online courses, and purchases can be anything from a one-time fee to a subscriptions fee. And when it comes to evolving my business, I can make smarter business decisions with Squarespace's intuitive built-in analytics tools, which allows me to review website traffic or learn where to focus my engagement, track revenue from bookings, invoices and product sales, and all of this is in one place. So if you're interested, check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Lady of the Library to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, in his book The Stranger, or L'Estranger, or The Outsider as it's known in English, Camus demonstrates how terrifying people find the absurd. The story centres a man who is on trial for killing another man, and while everyone is confident he'll be released without punishment, by the end of the trial he is sentenced to death, not because of his crime, but because of how he presents himself in the trial. Nothing has meaning to this man. He is completely indifferent to everything. He is the absurd man. He is completely detached from values and never seeks explanation or justification. He quietly revolts against society's expectations of him. He has no ethics or care for their judgment of him. He cares not for their opinions or the meaning they derive from his actions. The absurd man is aware of the absurdity that is everyday life. The repetitive motions of eating, sleeping, working, Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, the cyclical nature of it all, performed and followed without ever asking why. The monotony and repetitiveness of everyday life is epitomised by Sisyphus's task of rolling the boulder up the hill. He is condemned to a life of pain, and all of his efforts will be completely insignificant. Yet, Sisyphus is the absurd hero. Sisyphus is the absurd hero because he does not fall into despair over this. In the brief moment when the boulder rolls to the bottom of the hill, he turns to look at it, and in that moment he is free. And as he walks down to it, he is, quote, superior to his fate and stronger than his rock. For Camus, it is in Sisyphus's embrace of his struggle, no matter how repetitive or futile it may be, that gives it significance and value by embracing it as his own. Now, while society would be a dangerous place were everyone to be absurd, like the protagonist of Camus' novel, there's something rather liberating in realising through his attitude that many of the things that hold us back in life are choices that we make due to constraints that we choose to subscribe to. Now, this is most easily understood in terms of, say, religion. Religious doctrines have principles to live by, as well as constraints, such as no sex before marriage or no idolisation of false gods. And such principles and constraints are the point of the system. In what Camus would call a completely absurd cycle of life, people try to find meaning in living life a certain way, but also by allowing that meaning to guide its actions. Therefore, it is mute. So whether you are religious or not, we all have values that guide our lives and actions. Being concerned with how we are perceived by others, whether that's family or public shame or failure, that fear holds us back. It is in the judgment one receives for pursuing a futile endeavour that one is reluctant to continue pursuing it. It's the same reason that many people do not study certain courses at university because their family told them it won't make them money, or people stick to jobs that they hate because other people tell them, well, it's good money and the grass isn't greener on the other side. Being overly concerned with how other people perceive the value of our endeavours has the same constraining effect on our behaviours as the judgment of a god would on the behaviours of those who are religious. But Camus' absurdist man has no values, and as such is completely free, because what does any of it matter anyway? If one subscribes to the belief that nothing we do matters, and that everything we do in life is futile in the grand scheme of things, then what difference is pursuing a degree in medicine to aspiring to be an actor who works part-time in Starbucks? Well, the only difference would be other people's judgment of you, where other people would deem your career better or worthier, or more meaningful than the other. But if one were not to subscribe to those belief systems themselves and also accept the idea that there is no meaning in life, thus nothing was more or less meaningful than anything else, then it doesn't matter which career they pursue. For oneself, the only difference would be the value one subscribes to and lives by. Whether one valued spending one's time helping people in medical need or dedicating their life to theatre and the arts. Now, Camus would argue that the only reason people would consider one pursuit worthier than the other is down to man-made constructed ethics which elevate the preservation of life over the liberal arts. But to subscribe to that way of thinking is technically optional, and to consider oneself a good or bad person for subscribing to a certain way of thinking is also a man-made construct, the subscription to which is again optional. Now, in this hypothetical scenario that I presented to you, you may be subconsciously passing judgment, coming to the conclusion that the person who pursues medicine is better than the actor working in Starbucks. But the odds are, you watching this are not a doctor in medicine, and as such, may I ask you, do you constantly, every day, think to yourself that your life is worthless and pointless because you are not prioritising saving lives in your everyday work? Do you think you are lesser than because you are not saving lives? And do you think your life is meaningless when compared to a doctor's life? Well, the chances are that no, you don't think that way. You have other things going on, and the fact that you're not a medical doctor has probably rarely entered your head, if ever. But again, this hypothetical case study likely sparked judgment from you. Judgment which comes from a societal script that you have unconsciously subscribed to. For Camus, liberty is accepting the absurd and unsubscribing from it all. Because really, if we were to put everyone under a microscope and ascribe value or significance in the same way we'd pass judgment on to our child who was debating between studying medicine or pursuing acting, we'd find ourselves in a hellhole of never-ending torment of realising that our lives meant nothing and everything we did was futile in comparison to someone else. However, if we accept that everything we do is ultimately futile, we own our decisions and values as those that we have organically adopted. After all, it would be rather impossible to live without any values. But there would be no shame in oneself for openly admitting that they cared more for acting than they did medicine. If we do not value other people's judgments or opinions, how can they hurt us? If we never ascribed significance to anything, then there would be no insignificance that could hurt us either, for that would be the default. Those who embrace the absurdity of it all have the mental capacity to embrace the world and their life for what it is, without being impeded by existentialism or the judgments of others. Now, obviously, all this talk about the meaninglessness of life brings me to the elephant in the room: suicide. If life has no meaning, then why live it? Well, Camus argues suicide goes against all the opportunities presented by the meaninglessness of it all. Suicide is not the answer, and as someone who has a history of suicide attempts, I agree with Camus here. You see, what's wonderful about absurdism is that it sort of punches a hole through nihilism, with a smile on its face. For Camus, we should be embracing the meaninglessness of it all, rather than despairing in it. Learning to live without meaning is true freedom, because it provides so much opportunity to experience the quantity of opportunities the world has to offer. None of us, thankfully, are Sisyphus. None of us are locked into a divine fate of repetitive, monotonous physical torture. There will be moments where we feel like we are as such, but again, how much of those moments become tortuous and unbearable due to your reality or due to your mindset? And after reading this again to myself, I thought, what does it matter if my pursuits in life are futile, if I don't care that other people see my pursuits as futile, and I believe everything I do is fundamentally futile. Thus, my pursuit is no less futile than anything else I do in life. What does it matter if I fail, if I care not for the mockery, judgment, or unkindness of others? Does life end with one failure? Or does it offer insight to us about ourselves? Would I rather live with the reality of failure, or the hypothetical what if I'd never tried? And why are we so afraid of what that failure will mean for us when the meaning we derive from anything in life is entirely within our control? Do I look upon Sisyphus and see him as this pathetic, worthless man whose life is completely pointless? No, because I'm not a horrible, judgmental person. And, with all honesty, if his life were completely pointless, how has his mythology and his symbolism come to mean so much to billions of people across the world for thousands of years? Here is a man doing the most pointless thing a man can do. He has accomplished absolutely nothing and will accomplish nothing for all eternity. And yet, in doing nothing, he has done so much. And in accomplishing nothing, he has created so much meaning. Meaning that all of us have analysed and taken away from for thousands of years. He's renowned, not for his lack of accomplishments, but for his perseverance. It means nothing to anyone. It means nothing to the world, and yet what he does means so much that he has been dissected and discussed amongst scholars and philosophers and artists and writers and scientists for thousands of years. And it's rather amazing how much value futility can bring to the world when you think of it that way. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. My apologies for sounding a little grottier than usual. I'm afraid I do believe I've had an allergic reaction to my medication, a new medication I'm on. I've got like itchy nose, itchy ears and all that jazz, but I'll find out in an hour at the doctor's, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll sort it out. But thank you, as always, to my Patreons for making this possible, and thank you to my librarians. We have a new librarian, Silver Changeling. Thank you so much for joining. We have Lacey Grindstaff, Joshua Heredia, Gil the Gilded Dragon, Fox Goblin 666, Lady of the Labyrinth, Ellen, Eric Taylor, Yvonne and Yvonne, Jenny Edevade, Marina, Wee Lauren, Nicholas Reed and Andy Bazil. Thank you ever so much, as always. If you have any requests for future videos, please leave them down below. I do have a Google Docs form where you can put your little suggestions in. I'm working my way through them, I do promise. And thank you as always, and I hope you are happy and healthy. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.